Please state your full legal name for the record.
Anna Len Dominic.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Please describe for the court your educational background.
In 2013, I received a Bachelor's of Science degree in Criminal Justice with a concentration of crime and criminals. And I have a master's degree in psychology with a specialization in forensic psychology.
How many times have you been an expert witness?
This is my first time.
How much are you getting paid for your testimony today?
$400.
Did you perform an evaluation on Mr. Bumble?
Yes, I did.
Why were you asked to evaluate Mr. Bumble?
I received a referral from the court to perform an evaluation on Mr. Bumble for a competency to stand trial.
What legal definition is applicable to the referral question that you addressed when assessing Mr. Bumble?
Incompetency is when a defendant is unable to understand the nature and consequences of the proceedings against him and is unable to assist properly in his own defense.
What procedures and/or tests did you perform during your evaluation?
There were 9 tests. The Welsher Adult Intelligence Scale, the 3rd edition, Minnesota Multiphasic Personality Test, the 2nd edition, Personality Assessment Inventory, the Rorschach Ink Block Test, the Bender Motor Gestalt Test, and the Bender Motor Gestalt Test Immediate Recall, Rees 15-item test, psychopathy checklist revised, and the structured interview of reported symptoms.
What legal definition is applicable to... I just said that.
Okay.
What procedures and/or tests did you perform during your evaluation?
There were 14 subtests on the Welsher Adult Intelligence Scale, 3rd edition. IQ scores consisted of verbal and performance scores measured on a global scale. Mr. Bumble's cognitive ability is in the extremely low range of intellectual functioning. However, Mr. Bumble was experiencing a severe thought process disorder, which significantly lowered his scores. Mr. Bumble's full IQ score is 67, making it very hard for Mr. Bumble to understand what others his age do or to have appropriate thinking and reasoning abilities. His verbal score is a measure of acquired knowledge. His verbal abilities are in the borderline range of 72. The highest scores were in verbal reasoning, specifically on the digit span and information subtests. Mr. Bumble's lowest scores were below most people of his age on the letter numbering sequencing subtest. The Verbal Comprehension Index subtest is a measure of verbally acquired knowledge and reasoning. Mr. Bumble's performance is somewhat less well developed than others his age. The performance score is an indication of an individual's nonverbal reasoning, processing skills, attention to details, and verbal motor integration. Mr. Bumble's nonverbal reasoning abilities are in the extremely low range. His score was 67. The nonverbal reasoning tasks and block design subtest were the highest scores. The object assembly subtest was his lowest score. These areas show strengths and weaknesses, but are still below most of the individuals in his age group. The Perceptual Organization Index measures fluid reasoning, processing, attention to detail, and verbal motor integration. Again, the scores were less than others his age. His score was 70. The result shows that there is no difference in Mr. Bumble's abilities to think with or without words. The Working Memory Index provides information on the person's ability to process verbally presented information from memory and formulating a response. Mr. Bumble has extreme difficulty in holding information to perform a task, and it is more time consuming for him than for others his age, and he would make more errors than others, draining his mental energy more quickly than others. His score was 63. Subtests of working memory abilities to process and store information at the same time and to verbally express this information in a specific sequence is a strength for Mr. Bumble. On the process speed index, Mr. Bumble's skills in processing visual material without making errors is below others his age and are far below average. His score was 68. Overall, Mr. Bumble's verbal comprehension skills are much better developed than his nonverbal reasoning abilities to process visual information quickly, and his working memory. Furthermore, he did not show neurological deficits.
What were the results of your evaluation?
Next one.
Why do you believe that Mr. Bumble is not competent to stand trial?
In Mr. Bumble's personality functioning, Mr. Bumble is experiencing severe emotional distress through apathy, fearlessness, hopelessness, dysphoria, and anhedonia. On top of severe emotional distress, Mr. Bumble has concentration and attention difficulties, memory deficits and poor judgments, symptoms of paranoia and psychotic thought processes, is introverted and uncomfortable with others. Mr. Bumble's behavior is unpredictable and inappropriate, distrustful of others, avoids emotional relationships, is apathetic and socially isolated and withdrawn. Test results reveal Mr. Bumble has a strong urge to do something shocking or harmful. His suicidal ideology is likely to abuse. Mr. Bumble has suicidal ideology and is likely to abuse substances. He is likely to misperceive events.
What is your diagnosis?
The primary diagnosis is chronic paranoid schizophrenia. There is a presence. Oh, go ahead.
Can you describe for the court the reasons for that diagnosis?
There is a presence of characteristics, signs, and symptoms meeting the criteria for this disorder and has been presented most of Mr. Bumble's adult life. The positive characteristic symptoms are paranoid delusions, auditory hallucinations, and occasionally disorganized speech. He has mistaken impressions of people and their actions.
Is that diagnosis considered to be a mental disease or defect?
Wait, I have one more thing to add before that. Mr. Bumble's prognosis is generally poor, and psychopharmacological intervention is necessary and should be closely monitored. The defendant was also assessed for the competency to stand trial using assessment criteria developed by McGeary and MacArthur Competency Assessment Tool, the criminal adjudication. Negative characteristic symptoms are affective flattening at times, ovulation, which is an inability to initiate and persist in inability to initiate and persist in goal-directed activities. Mr. Bumble expresses ingrained paranoia delusions, which has been present through his medical history, and it has become chronic.
Is that diagnosis considered to be a mental disease or defect?
A disease.
Why?
A mental disease is any disease of the mind, the psychological state of someone who has emotional or behavioral problems serious enough to require psychiatric intervention. Incomplete development of the mind, psychopathic disorder, or any disorder or disability of the mind that causes poor ability to function in ordinary life out of the social norm.
Do you believe Mr. Bumble understands the proceedings today?
Mr. Bumble does not have an adequate understanding of the general aspects.
Yes or no, please?
No.
Why?
Mr. Bumble does not have an adequate understanding of the general aspects of the legal process. He scored clinically significantly impaired. Due to the defendant's psychotic symptoms, he is not able to consider realistically all of the defenses available to him at this time.
Do you think Mr. Bumble understands what he is charged with?
Mr. Bumble has a good understanding.
Yes or no, please?
No.
Why?
Mr. Bumble has a good understanding of the charges against him, but not the procedures he would face in the trial. The defendant does not have the present ability to relate to his... I'm sorry, that was... Next question.
Do you think Mr. Bumble can work with his attorney to successfully defend himself?
The defendant does not have the present...
Yes or no, please?
Oh, no.
Why?
The defendant does not have the present ability to relate to his attorney. Due to his current psychotic symptoms, he thinks that one of his attorneys is a drug dealer and is speaking to him through a television set.
Do you have any other information about Mr. Bumble that you feel would be helpful to the court?
Yes. Mr. Bumble is not able to, well, I had something to add about his attorney. The defendant does not have the ability to provide his attorney with factual information due to his extreme paranoia. Other information would be that Mr. Bumble is currently severely mentally ill. Due to his level of illness, he is not able realistically to plan a meaningful legal defense. Mr. Bumble obtained a score in the clinically significant impairment range on the reasoning section of the MacArthur Competency Test, criminal adjudication.
Thank you. You may step down.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Well,
Not bad.
that wasn't too bad. I don't know if I should do
Well,
it
for the
again.
first time, you're going to get probably a lot of yes or no pleases. Yes or no.
Well, I guess that
Only
concludes the video. Hold on, let me figure out. Okay.